Hi everybody, let's talk about a case study of a population policy, specifically China's one-child policy. A bit of background on the causes of the one-child policy. China suffered a great famine in the 1960s with 30 million deaths. Food supply tanked, country was overpopulated, people starved to death. However, your population still grew by 200 million from 1964 to 1974. And in 1975, the birth rate was 31.9 per thousand, death rate was 8.4 per thousand, population was 916 million, suggesting that population will continue to grow at large and may suffer more issues, more catastrophes due to overpopulation. To try to combat this, they already attempted the later longer fewer policy, encouraging families to have children later on in their lives, wait longer between each children, and therefore have fewer children, but it failed because it wasn't heavily enforced. The life expectancy was also quite low at 41 years because of food issues, agricultural work, and also money for families was spread amongst a lot of children, very large families, and therefore your standard of healthcare per child was really poor, therefore 41 years life expectancy. So they introduced the one-child policy, which was an antenatal policy from 1979 to 2015. They set the marriage age at 20 for females and 22 for males to encourage later marriages. And also, the ultrasound to check genders were banned. What happened during the one-child policy was that because in Chinese culture, males are preferred, the last name is passed on, the wives might move into the family, so your families expand, and therefore males are preferred. If you have ultrasounds to check the fetus, to check the gender of the fetus, they might abort any females, so they had ultrasounds banned to check the gender in order to have births of females. There's also forced and voluntary abortions, a total of 330 million cases of abortions during the one-child policy, forced and voluntary sterilization, 220 million cases, with more tubectomies than vasectomies, so more sterilization of women than men. There was also fines that range from 10,000 yuan for farmers to 4 times the annual income for provinces like Henan. There was demotion at work or dismissal from work, and there's also lost privileges. You lose your pensions, you lose food loans, you lose your land, you lose free education, you lose financial bonuses, and other privileges of having one child. However, not everyone is affected by the one-child policy. Some people were exempt. Farmers were allowed to have 2 children if their first child was a female. 55 ethnic minorities in China, which was 8% of the population, including Tibetans, Zhuangs, Mongols, they were exempt, depending on their minorities' population. If the child died, then the family can have another child. If the child is disabled, they can have another child. And if both parents are from one-child families, in order to encourage not a shrinking population in the future, in order to encourage more births, if parents are both from one-child families, they can have 2 children. The successors of the one-child policy, the birth rate did shrink from 31.9 to 12.7 births per thousand, 1975 to 2015. Your life expectancy rose to 77 years in 2015, so higher than 41 years before. Household savings increased from 4% to 37%, because now money can be concentrated for one child. It doesn't have to be spread amongst so many people, so you can save up money. Increased from 1977 to 2015, 4 to 37%. And there's also better education. So now money can be concentrated on one child. You can give them tuition. You can afford better education, better universities, better high schools for children. And therefore, China has been able to develop with education and therefore other economic opportunities. Failures, however, the one-child policy created a sex imbalance. Again, remember this idea of males being preferred in Chinese culture. You did have some abortions early on of females, and also a lot of the times female baby daughters were left in wells, abandoned or killed, and therefore you have an increase in sex imbalance of 118 men per 100 females in 2010. There's also abandoned daughters. Again, this idea of males being preferred. A lot of female daughters were abandoned, were put into orphanages. 95% of the orphans in state-owned orphanages are female. There's also spoiled children. Because money is concentrated in them, a lot of children get whatever they want, and they're really cherished by their parents. So they're called little emperors, and there's high rates of obesity amongst them, and they're really spoiled against Chinese traditional culture. There's an aging population issue in China as well, with 7% elderly population in 2000, increasing to 21% in 2023. This leads to issues such as worker shortages as well. Domestic violence, again, this concept of males being preferred in Chinese culture. Women, your wives, your mothers might get beat or divorced by the fathers if they conceived a daughter. And there's also the cultural shift in fertility. Now people are used to having one child. They see the benefits of having one or no children at all, and therefore it's harder for the government to incentivize further increases in births with the aging population issue. So China has introduced a two-child policy, the three-child policy, but it hasn't been working because of this cultural shift. So this sums it up for China's one-child policy. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.